Just a Bit of Bread by Nyan Zangetsu, Chapter 5, Wolves and Sheep. There it is. That's the look. I've seen it for years, in face after face in the streets of Akuo. Stop running from your past, damn it. Face it head on. Grab it by the horns. I know it's hard for you. I know it hurts. But trust me, it's gonna be a whole lot worse if you leave things as they are. If you can't get over it, and then commit to it. Strangle that guilt holding you back. Raise your head high and walk forward. I can't. I'm not a monster, unlike you. I regret the things I've done. Oh, monster, am I? Perhaps you should speak to me more softly then. Monsters are dangerous. You damn me for the deeds I've done. You judge me for the crimes you think I've committed. But your hands are just as bloody as mine, if not more so. Men fear monsters, don't they? And not just men, but women and children too. Even our kind run from them, fear them, dread them. And you believe you know what it is to be a monster? So you've taken a few lives and feel bad about it? Bah! There are worse things than death. Get over yourself. You have no idea what a monster is. Blake, follow me. I'm going to show you. An argument of ideals. Wolves and sheep. Life wasn't fair. Blake Belladonna had never been more certain of that fact until this moment. Give it back! She tried for what felt like the umpteenth time to snatch her stolen ribbon back from Naruto, to no avail. Much to her dismay, her fellow faunus held it tight to his right hand as he walked ahead of her. Any attempt on her part to extract it from his fist seemed doomed to failure. No matter how she tried to distract him, she couldn't pry the strip of fabric from his fist. Every attempt on her part only served to deepen his scowl. By now, the sixth attempt, he looked positively murderous. Still, she had to try. Would you stop glaring at me? Naruto clicked his tongue in mild admonishment as he stepped over a fallen log. I'm not happy about this either, but we're partners now. We'll just have to deal with it. She swiped at his hand again. No. He shook his head and batted her palm away. You're not getting this back. I don't know why you're hiding those ears of yours, but I'm not having it. Don't hide who you are. It's none of your business, she sulked. I had a reason for hiding them. I'm a fox, sweetheart. Piercing blue eyes roved across the path ahead and the trees above before finally settling on her. Everything is my business. Tell you what. He paused and turned to plant his back against a worn-looking tree. You tell me the reason why, and I'll give it back. No strings attached. Silence reigned supreme. Have it your way. The fox fauna shrugged. The bow stays with me then. You're insufferable, you know that. Blake scuffed the ground with her foot and kicking dirt at him as he marched on ahead of her once more. I don't want to be your partner. You weren't even trying to knock me out of that tree. Why don't you just let me go and pretend you never met me? It would be better for the both of us. No can do, kitty cat. As ever, his razor wit bit through her defiance like an angry Beowulf. Ospen and his cronies are watching us. You can run if you'd like. You strike me as the type, but it won't change the result. She dragged herself after him like a ball in chain for fear of being left behind. You're lying. Nope. Naruto jerked a thumb over his shoulder, indicating a nearby oak to her right. There's a camera up there in the branches. You can see it in the sunlight if you squint. Much to her chagrin, she saw light dance off metal as the lens focused on them. See? He snapped off a snarky salute to the device in question. There's no getting out of this. Damn it, damn him. She'd tried so hard, gotten so far, but in the end it didn't even matter. She'd come to begin to start over. This was meant to be the beginning of a new life for her. She'd pass initiation and become a huntress here, find a simple partner who wouldn't pry in her past, and a team who wouldn't ask questions. She would be free of the White Fang and all her sins, given a chance to atone. Fate had a cruel sense of humor, it seemed. Instead, she'd wound up with the one person she couldn't accept. She'd seen this boy mop the floor with Carden and his cronies in the auditorium with almost putative ease, and while a small silent part of her admired that he'd stuck up for that poor girl, right now she wanted nothing more than to drown him in a river. It wasn't his fault. He just stood out too much, reminded her of Adam too much. She thought herself clever, but moreover, she thought Vel was safe. She'd left the White Fang to get away from faunus like him, not to tumble into the arms of another. In a different life, she would have waited another year before leaving the Fang, leaving Adam behind as she had, but she'd been so angry. A simple argument between the two of them had escalated into a war of ideals, and so here she was. Adam and Ilya weren't supposed to come after her, yet they had. Now here she was, trapped with a manic of a different story, who still wouldn't give her back her bow. Beacon was meant to be an escape from all this, a winning hand in the card game that was life, not this. Frantic and out of options, she threw one of her last remaining cards at her not still silent partner. I know who you are. Naruto hummed and peeled back a branch for her. Do you now? By all means, enlighten me. She ducked under it and hurried after him. Damn him and those long legs of his. He had to be enjoying this. You're that thief? Then he only chuckled at her. She felt her face darken even more. The one from Vacuo, Desert Storm. Really? His laughter redoubled. Is that what you're calling me these days? Ha! He batted aside a whip of vines and paused to inspect the tree whose bark had been clawed apart. Amateurs. Should have picked a better name. Doesn't that mean anything to you? His laughter only intensified, leaving her to duck under the next branch herself. She glowered angry golden daggers at the blonde's broad shoulders, trying to burn a hole through his back with them alone. Every faunus worth their salt knew his deeds, even if many had never seen his face. The twin shields he wore at his wrist merely confirmed her earlier suspicion. She didn't even know if Naruto was his real name, but she knew what the Fang called him to make her own assumptions. Desert Storm, not quite a gentleman thief, but not some mindless thug either. A daring burglar. His crimes were many, but unlike Adam, he'd never taken a life. She didn't have any proof, but she'd suspected, and he'd made no effort to deny it. It was enough to make her want to melt back into the shadows and hide. So much for her new life. She was associated with a wanted criminal now. How long would it be until others made the connection, realized just what she was trying to hide? Her past seemed determined to hound her everywhere she went. Cat got your tongue? Naruto's voice called up ahead of her. You've been quiet for a while now. That's unlike you. Blake growled and bowled on ahead of him. Rather, she tried to until an arm shot out to bar her path. She glowered bloody red daggers at its owner. Will you stop being When that same hand slammed over her mouth and yanked her behind a tree, her first instinct was to panic. Fear compelled her to cry out, but even that noise was muffled against Naruto's palm. She glared up at him, but those mirthful blue eyes were chips of ice now, cold and hard and focused. Naruto raised a finger to his lips. He shook his head slowly, and she saw his mouth move. Though no sound emerged, it was easy enough to read them. She soon wished she hadn't. Don't move. Blake didn't get a chance to ask why not. She heard it before she saw it. A great dark shape, easily 3 times their height, lumbered through the emerald forest ahead of them, swaying and lurching. She caught a flash of white bone against the black, and her heart skipped a beat. Grim. It didn't look right. She'd seen her fair share of minor grim before, even killed a few, but there was something off about this one. And before she could ascertain what it was, the beast paused, sniffed once at the air, and moved on. There, Naruto released her as it bounded away. It's gone. Blake pawed at his hand. What the hell was that? Warn me next time. Probably a Beowulf. Naruto slumped against the tree. Big one too. We're better off avoiding it. Abruptly, the canopy above them shook as something landed miles above them. Both fauns froze. An unfamiliar shriek pierced the sky as whatever it was took off again, and a cold downdraft assaulted them. Blake felt a cold bead of sweat run down her brow as she released a breath she hadn't even known she was holding. And that? It's something bigger. Her partner thumbed his chin as he regarded the tree above with a bleak look. Never more about the sounds of it. Something we want no part of. I don't know about you, but I'm no good when it comes to aerial grim. Was this forest full of giant grim or something? Blake looked down and saw her ribbon still held in his fist. Saw her chance. He was distracted by the trees. Moreover, he wasn't paying the least attention to her. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. She dove for it while he was looking away, and against all odds, succeeded. This time, she somehow managed to wrap her fingers around the tail end of the thin material. The moment she did, she yanked on it with all her might. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. Enough! Naruto batted the hand away and rounded on her with a hiss as he held it out of her grasp. We've got giant grim about, and you're still after this thing? Where are your priorities? It's mine, she cried. You're right. The smile he flashed her was colder than winter itself. Let's do something about that. Before she could think to stop him, he stepped back and seized the thin strip of fabric between both hands. An ominous ripping sound filled Blake's ears as he snapped the ribbon taut. No, he wouldn't. Surely he couldn't be that cruel. Even as she stepped forward to stop him, it was too late. She could only cry out, "No, don't!" Naruto tore her ribbon, what was left of it, to shreds before her very eyes. Blake felt something tear inside herself with the ruined cloth. It was just a ribbon, she told herself. She could always get another one, but then it would be too late. She'd be seen by the rest of the first years and outed as fondest. She knew what would come after. It would be just the same as it always was. Because of this, because of him. There, he patted his hands, leaving the torn shreds to settle at her feet. Let's see you wear it now, coward. Coward. Without so much as a backward glance, he stormed away. Still, that last word struck Blake like a slap in the face, and she hesitated, if only for a moment. She'd been called worse, far worse, during her time with the Fang, but those words still stung all the same, even more so coming from someone outside it. Her anger ignited. Why are you like this? She shouted at his back. Me? Quick as a flash, he rounded on her, ears twitching. I'm not the one hiding who I am. Her own flashed in response. That's not. Blake Belladonna, really, how obvious can you be? He snapped his teeth at her, eliciting another flinch from the younger faunus. If you know me, then just about every faunus alive knows your last name. You didn't even try to disguise yourself. Not really. A bow. Come on now, did you think that would work? And look at you! She rammed her forehead against his with a hiss, standing on her tippy toes just to reach him. You didn't even try to change your appearance. I used a more subtle approach, but you're right. He leaned back, leaving her startled with his reply. I could have, but I didn't. Do you know why? Tremulously, she shook her head. Unlike you, I'm proud of my life. The whiskered youth jabbed a thumb at his chest. His words cracked at her like a whip. I have no regrets. If I see injustice or something I don't like, I'll act first and ask questions later. Consequences be damned. If anyone is bullied in front of me, human or faunus, I'm gonna break that bully's leg. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's how I work. He really was just like Adam. No, he was worse. Adam slaughtered the enemies of the White Fang. Naruto clearly left his wishing for death. He left them humiliated and broken, just like Cardin. You can't do that. She said as much for what little good it did her. Can. He poked her forehead, forcing her back a step. Will. Get used to it, princess. Another poke, another retreat. You only get one life in this rotten world, so make the most of it. Her back hit a tree, and he all but pinned her there with his gaze. Now get off your high horse, stop running, and fight for what you believe in. Isn't that what the White Fang does? I'm not. You are. Naruto paused, frowned, reconsidered his words as he considered another savage tree, or at the very least, you were. Used to be. You have that air about you. Realization dawned in his eyes, and the weight behind his gaze threatened to bury her alive. I get it now. Why else would someone like Adam freaking Taurus come to Beacon like this? He came to retrieve someone. You. She took a step backwards. Are you working with him? Why would I? I'm a freak, she scoffed, a tail thrashing angrily against his back. 9 out of 10 faunus come into this world with a single animal trait. Me, I wound up with 2, 3 if you count the whiskers. His ears hummed, and the faunus alike twitched as he stared her down. If that weren't enough, there's the matter of my birth. My mother, my own flesh and blood, died bringing me into this world. He shrugged, uncaring of her flinch. My father couldn't bear to look at me after that. He finally threw me out into the streets a few years later. Do you have any idea what it's like to live like that? Or do you even care? No. Turning his head, he spat at her feet. We're nothing alike, Blake. He shook his head. Em and I chose to leave the life of a thief behind because we made enemies. Fear had nothing to do with it. The stake we're getting too high, and we wanted something better than what we had, so we left. We never lied to ourselves, never deceived each other. We knew exactly what we were getting into. He jammed both thumbs into his belt and frowned at her. If this falls through, it'll be a disappointment, but it won't be the end of our world. We'll just have to make a career change. You'll go back to being thieves, she flung the words at him. We won't like it. He batted the words away with a bitter smile. But we have to make a living. You're no better than a common criminal. At that remark, his eyes turned to slits, and she thought he might slap her. And there it is. Incredibly, he smiled and shook his head. That's the look. I've seen it I've seen it for years, in face after face, in the streets of Ekro. In a flash, Naruto moved. Stop running from your past, damn it! Blake realized her peril too late. By then, he had already seized her by the shoulders. Now he gave her a firm shake. Face it head on. Grab it by the horns if you have to. I know it's hard for you. I know it hurts. When she tried to speak out and shoot him down, he snarled her into silence. Listen to me. If you keep going as you are now, you're going to regret it. If you can't get over what you've done, then commit to it. Strangle that guilt holding you back. Raise your head high and walk forward. I can't, she railed back, slapping his chest. I'm not a monster unlike you. I regret the things I've done. Oh, monster am I? The blonde reared back as if she'd slapped him, and his skull turned to a bitter smile. Perhaps you should speak to me more softly then. Monsters are dangerous. You'd happily damn me for the deeds I've done, condemn me for the crimes you think I've committed, but your hands are just as bloody as mine. His fingers jabbed her shoulder, and she recoiled with a hiss. If not more so. That's not... I didn't. Men fear monsters, don't they? Still, he advanced, bulldozing her protest. And not just men, but women and children too. Even our kind run from them, fear them, dread them, and you believe you know what it is to be a monster. So you've taken a few lives and feel bad about it. Tough. Her wrist lashed at him, and he caught it, stalling the slap before it could strike. See, you tried to hit me for it. Hypocrite, you'll gladly run away from your past, but you won't face it. He flung her arm away. There are worse things than death, far worse. Get over yourself. A lone ice blue iris regarded her over his shoulder. You have no idea what a monster is, Blake. Follow me. I'm going to show you. And if I refuse, that's on you. His shoulders rose and fell in a huff. Follow or don't. You're a hot mess, and I shouldn't have to fix you, but I'm gonna try. Blake wasn't sure if that was supposed to comfort her or not. She dragged herself after him. They walked on in bitter silence for what felt like hours. In reality, she was sure only a few minutes had passed. Finally, Naruto spoke again. I'm not sorry about what I said, he said haughtily, choosing the words with great care as they broke through the brush and found the path once more. You might think me cruel, but it's the truth. I'm not saying the White Fang is full of saints, but sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in. Nothing will change if you just stand there and turn the other cheek. I did fight. She took her lips between her teeth. I'm tired of fighting. You never stop fighting, Naruto countered sagely as he led them deeper into the thicket. From the moment you take your first breath in this world to your last, you're always fighting for something, be it food, water, or even companionship. You see, the trick is finding something to believe in, something you love, someone you'd die for. Blue eyes turned to regard her, widened. Duck! Blake obeyed without thinking, and not a moment too soon. A rush of warm air passed perilously close to her head as one Naruto shields whipped past, followed by a bestial howl, one far too close for her liking. Against her better judgment, the younger fauness turned and found the source. She tumbled backwards with a yelp when she found the weapon buried in the white skull of Beowulf, its jaw poised perilously close to take a bite right out of her shoulder. No longer. The creature collapsed with a wet gurgle at her feet and dissolved into a harmless ash. She hadn't even heard it coming. Was she really that distracted? You all right? Golden eyes blinked rapidly as concerned blue orbs welled before her. Between one moment and the next, Naruto had appeared beside her. Now he offered her his hand as he bent down to retrieve his fallen shield. He could have let her die, but he hadn't. Why? She sucked in a small ragged breath and clamped a hand down on his arm, allowing herself to be hoisted to her feet. Have you killed Grim before? He was looking at her as though she were glass, afraid she might shatter at any moment. She loathed it. Of course I have. Her cheeks burned as she batted his hands away. I was just caught off guard, and that's all. That's unusual, Naruto muttered. Not you, he amended casually at her heated glance. Grim don't sneak up on people like that. The regular ones usually just howl and bray and run dead at you. Even the crabs back in Vacuo didn't really ambush you unless you walked right over their lair. Well, the spiders did, but that's to be expected, I guess. Crabs? Blake felt her gut twist. Spiders? Big ones, Nato added with a nod, heedless of her growing terror. They jumped right out of the sand, and wham! A fist smacked into an open palm. If you weren't careful, you'd be dragged right under. I don't think I want to see Vacuo, Blake whimpered. Ever. Don't blame you, he grinned, and for the first time she found herself almost mirroring it. Nobody likes Vacuo. Don't look now, but we've got more company. Blake followed his gaze and found a pair of Ursai, minor and greater alike, lumbering out of the brush only a few yards ahead. Unlike the odd Beowulf of before, these two made no such attempt at subterfuge. They saw them and charged forward, braying all the while. She broke off to engage the smaller of the pair, used her semblance to evade its first swipe, and subconsciously dispatched it with a quick slice across the throat. Quick and efficient, not a single motion wasted on her part. Naruto dove at the big one, eyes burning red. I call dibs! To its credit, the Ursa saw him coming and reached accordingly for all the good it did. Rather than take its mighty claw on one of its shields, the blonde let glance harmlessly off his aura and leaped at the beast. Unprepared for such a suicidal maneuver, the Grim wasn't able to react until he clambered onto its back. By then, it was too late. 10 palms clamped down on the ghastly white spines protruding from its back and held tight. What are you doing? Blake balked. Naruto didn't answer her with words but deeds. That ghastly glow in those now amber orbs roared ever higher, alight with some inner flame. The beast must have sensed something amiss, because its struggles intensified tenfold. Still, Naruto clung on, riding the bear like a bucking bronco. His eyes burned a bloody scarlet now, sharp and slitted. His lips parted in an almost rapturous expression. Blake started forward, gamble shroud in hand. Her charge died when she saw his body begin to burn red. Enraged beyond measure, the Ursa reared up and tried to crush Naruto against the tree, but the blonde merely twisted his body out of the way, planted his feet on its back, and pulled, and the Grim began to slow. Osmond blinked down at the scroll in his hand, once, twice, then thrice. Well, he frowned, I didn't expect this. Glinda looked over his shoulder and her face turned absolutely ashen. Osmond didn't blame her. Had he a mirror, he expected his face would have been a similar shade of white right about now. It was like watching something out of a horror movie. You wanted to look away, and he did, but you just couldn't bring yourself to avert your eyes from the disaster unfolding before you. How strange. He'd chosen to watch the boy on a whim, and here, in this moment, he almost pitied the blonde's prey. That did not look like a pleasant death. Still, this was incredible and terrifying. Such a power could not be squandered, though it hurt his heart to say it. Beacon needed such a gift. Sir, his lieutenant whispered. Is he? His lips turned down in a grimace. Killing it? Yes. The Ursa was dying. It was the work of minutes rather than moments, but with each passing second that Blake stood by, she watched the beast grew weaker. Little by little, its throes diminished, dark fur turned coarse and grey, muscles atrophied as its body became old and brittle like so much rotten driftwood, and still her partner didn't relent. He took and took and took until the beast had nothing left to give, until it collapsed, legs folding beneath its burly bulk, those ghastly red eyes closed, never to open again. Naruto rode its corpse to the ground with a small sigh and smacked his lips. Thanks for the meal. A beat of awkward silence pushed itself between the two fawnings once more. What was that? Blake backpedaled, her mouth open in a small round O of muted confusion as she watched her partner dismount the decaying corpse. That wasn't his semblance. No, it couldn't be. She'd seen it last night. His was the teleportation type. At least she assumed it was. Used to move short distance at a rapid pace. What the hell was this? He tried that Ursa dry, like a tall glass of water. It had taken him some time and no small amount of effort. Sure, but still, he flashed her a warm smile. I could ask you the same thing. Was that a clone semblance? Don't distract me. You can't have two semblances, she babbled, taking 3 steps back. It's not possible. Not natural. You're right. In a technical sense. He paused to roll his right shoulder with an audible pop. I was born with only one semblance. I gained Another. Blake didn't like the implications of that sentence, least of all his tone. He was being mysterious. The bastard. Her keen mind caught the hints he left and made the connections. Gained. He said gained. That implied that he hadn't had the second semblance, hadn't been born with it. Could he steal semblances then? And if so, how? It all made a twisted sort of sense. No wonder the headmaster was willing to overlook Naruto's crimes. He wanted him here in Beacon. Badly, a gift like that could change the world, or destroy it. She shuddered and hugged her arms close to her chest as the chill swept through her. How pragmatic. Adam would kill for a gift like that. So would the rest of the world. Why tell me this? She asked. Why tell me anything at all? Because no one will ever believe you. Naruto tilted his head, then laughed when she blanched. That aside, I decided to make a point, both to you and whoever might be watching us. He pointedly looked up at where another camera was no doubt concealed. Earlier, you called me a monster. When he strode forward, Blake nearly shrank back. I think how many people I could have killed with this. How many I haven't killed. Remember that before you judge me. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Now hold still. His hand pulsed red again, but rather than pain, she experienced a sudden rush of vitality, as if she'd drunk a cup of coffee. Several cups. Death is a cycle, Naruto replied as she looked on in quiet awe. It gives and it takes away. Red eyes faded back to their true blue and lanced into her golden. Healing is a part of that. I choose what to do with the energy I take. I can hoard it, all of it, for myself, or I can use it in the service of others. I don't understand you. She pulled away with a small shiver. You wouldn't be the first. Maybe I was a better person in my first life. He shook his head. I get the feeling sometimes, I really do, but Grimm deserved no mercy. I'll use any and every advantage I have against them. Blake opened her mouth to retort to that effect. Aha! There you are! A low, annoyed voice plucked the words right off her tongue. I thought I heard your voice. Where the hell have you been? Were you hiding or something? For the first time since she'd met him, Naruto's blue eyes sparkled with true life once again. He rounded on the sound, for it came from behind them. That's my line! Emerald burst out of the undergrowth ahead of them, eyes narrowed and cheeks flushed with emotion, said eyes fixed on Naruto and widened, narrowed again. The thief didn't move. She bolted. There was a subtle sway in the older girl's hips when she approached them, an almost lazy yet tense gait that could morph into a dead sprint at the slightest provocation. Her own smile mirrored Naruto's in its intensity. No, it burned brighter still, like a child finding a long-lost friend. He met her halfway. Emerald output crashed into him and buried her face into his chest with a sound that vaguely resembled a sigh. 10 arms wrapped around his waist like a lasso and held on for dear life. For his part, the blonde didn't make an effort to escape her embrace. Even if he could, he simply laid his chin atop her head and patted her back. Blake flushed and looked away as he spoke. Did you think I'd run away or something? Shut up. Emerald glowered into his jacket. Idiot, stupid. I hate you. Missed you too, he hummed, planting a chaste kiss against her forehead. She grumbled on and held tighter. All the while, Blake watched them with increasing difficulty and discomfort. There was no degree of difference between the two of them. They were partners, equals in all things, perhaps even lovers. Oddly enough, the thought hurt. It reminded her of Adam. Witnessing such a display made her feel like an outsider. No, she was one, intruding on their moment like this. As if sensing that very thought, Emerald finally noticed her. Hey, who's the kid? Just a tag along, Naruto answered a little too quickly. Well, he's my partner. Blake hated to say it, but she knew she was better off with these two than Adam or Ilya. They wouldn't understand. They'd just drag her back to the Fang. She wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. What was the saying the humans used? But it's the devil that didn't kill, then the one that did. Wait, that wasn't it. Fine. Emerald smiled and was all teeth. I haven't made eye contact with anyone else myself. Guess that makes him my partner too. Huh? Naruto blinked. Bit of a technicality, but that works, doesn't it? That's not how the rule works, Blake protested. The two thieves laughed. Nobody cares. Where was everyone? Try as he might, Gordon Winchester hadn't seen so much as a single soul in the last hour, not since that damn fox at any rate. Just the thought of him made his blood boil anew. His fist tightened around the haft of his mace as he used it to mow down a web of vines in his path, all the while an angry ember of rage continued to burn in the back of his mind. Bloody bunny lover, this was all his fault. Well, he'd show him and all those freaks. He'd just been caught off guard last night. Yeah, that was it. None of this was his fault. It was all bad luck. Everyone was out to get him. He almost believed it. His launch pad had been one of the first to go off. That load should have guaranteed him a spot in the upper echelons. Instead, he'd been knocked on his ass and left to fend for himself. Damn fox. He'd make him pay. Now where the hell were his boys? It was quiet here without them. Too quiet. Freaked him right out, it did. A twig snapped behind him. Carton jumped and rounded on the sound. Dove, Sky, that you? Leaves rustled all around him, shifting and bending in the wind. Russell, you there? Somewhere ahead of him he heard a tree creak ominously, as if someone had knocked it down, or something. Come on, guys! A note of high panic etched itself into the boy's voice as he looked around for its source. This shit ain't funny. Bottling ahead, he made for the first open area he could find, silently praying that it would be the ruins the old man had mentioned. Freaking headmaster! Daylight burst through the trees as he broke free from the branches. A delighted gasp stole its way out of him. With the encroaching branches now behind him, Carden felt as though a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He was just being paranoid. There was nothing to be afraid of here. The Emerald Forest was dangerous, sure, but so was he. He was fearless. He was mighty. He had a freaking two-handed mace, for crying out loud. Something wet and cloying sucked against his boot. The hell? The burly teen lifted his foot, frowned at it, and moved on towards the ruin. At first, Carter didn't understand what he was looking at in the distance, if only because the glade before him was a mess of torn earth and dirt. Strange shapes lay scattered about at odd angles, and he didn't understand what they were. At first, a sudden pang of dread stole over him as he approached. Why were there crows in the sky? Were those even crows at all? Upon closer inspection, he recognized the shapes. They were bodies. Dead bodies. They'd been slaughtered to a man. Not just them, but one or two of the other applicants too. Men he didn't recognize. What the shit? 3 of them, he knew. Sky's head had been plucked right off his shoulders and spirited away, leaving his ruined body for the crows. Dove was clutching at what might have been his stomach before something had torn it open. Russell... Oh gods, couldn't even look at him. They died hard, all 3 of them. They died fighting, and he hadn't been there. Carden turned and vomited his breakfast into the grass, a lurid green puddle spreading beneath them. He looked up and heaved again. They weren't strong. No, scratch that. He wasn't strong enough. What had he been thinking, coming to begin a year early? They weren't ready for something like this. It was his fault, all his fault. He'd been the one to pressure his dad, who had in turn put pressure to Ospen. They'd all wanted to be huntsmen so very badly, to be big bad heroes, be big bad damn heroes, and now his friends had paid the price for his folly. A low howl echoed through the woods. It was soon taken up by another. Another still, another, each louder than the last. Monstrous eyes followed him from the grove he'd left behind, one pair larger than the rest, far larger. Something impossibly huge lopped out of the thicket and into the clearing ahead of him. It was big, far bigger than any Beowulf had any right to be, easily eclipsing eclipsing him on all 4s. Hideous green spikes jutted from its back like porcupine quills as hideous slitty green eyes roved about the grove. Damn thing didn't look right. There was some ghostly metal-bladed thing attached to one of its hind legs that seemed to drag behind it, tearing a deep furrow into the ground as it walked. Looked like it had been welded on by some madman, but that wasn't what captured his attention. Carden gulped. You bastard! If its bloody snout and stained claws didn't confirm his suspicion already, Russell's arm did all that and more. He couldn't even see the boy's long daggers He could even see the boy's long dagger jutting out of the beast's back, alongside Dove's short sword and the roaring shaft of Sky's halberd with a number of others. As he looked on, the gigantic creature tossed its head back and swallowed the mangled limb whole. This monster, this bastard, this thing had murdered his friends, his team. If he stood his ground there alone, it would undoubtedly do the same to him. It saw him. Then, or perhaps it heard him. Who could say? Regardless, it made a chuffing sound that might have been laughter. Bullshit. Everyone knew that Grim didn't laugh, right? Little pig, little pig, little pig. Oh, what fresh hell was this? Grim couldn't talk at all, so why was this one speaking? Carden's palm grew slick with sweat, and his mane suddenly felt like a lead weight in his hands. His armor, a heavy weight dragging him down. To his dismay, more of the creature's pack emerged from the trees, and still his legs failed him. One after the other, they padded forward until he could no longer count them. No, he couldn't die here. He had to avenge his friends, but he couldn't do it alone. He knew that strength meant nothing against these numbers, and yet if he ran, they'd run him down in a matter of minutes, if not sooner. The lead Beowulf threw back its head and loosed a mighty howl that rattled the air itself. What little remained of Carden's resolve broke. He scampered, and the pack gave chase. Previews: little pigs. Naruto glowered up at the Beowulf. Careful, Cinder's voice brushed his ears. It's faster than it looks. I'm not worried about that. Why the hell can this thing talk? Grim don't talk. She shrugged helplessly. If you can buy me time, I should be able to finish it off. Just be careful. You're of no use to me dead. And here I thought you cared. She slapped his arm. Be quiet and get ready. Much to his annoyance, the giant abomination glowered right back at the lot of them. Size or no, it was outnumbered. Sanity or not, it had to know that. Yet still, it stared them down, unafraid, confident even. He heard his allies draw their weapons behind him, felt Pyrrha tense against his side, fearing her good leg. Coco was only a heartbeat behind. With Blake and the rest, she wouldn't even look at Adam and Ilya, nor they hear. That was going to be an awful mess to fix once they were done. But for now, he was more concerned with this towering creature. From her perch and the trees above, Emerald drew a sharp breath. She whistled harshly. Now! She shouted, Go, go, go! Together, the students absolutely blitzed the beast. Come on, Whiskers. Coco clicked her tongue. Why, we don't have all day. Make your choice already. Who you and Blake gonna work with? Emerald turned pleading eyes on him. You can't be serious. It's not even a choice, right? It was like an arrow in the heart. Urk, wake up! Ha! Our team's the best. Oh, that sounds like a challenge. Shall we make a game of it then? Osmond stippled his fingers and laid his chin atop them. By all means, enlighten me. What precisely does your semblance do? Well, it's hard to explain. Naruto scratched a whiskered cheek. I mean, given what it can do, I thought about calling it All for One, but it felt like that would be too on the nose for some reason. Reaper's touch just sounded way more badass at the time, and ow! Emerald slapped the back of his head. Ignore that. He's being an ass. Quite, the headmaster sighed. Continue. End of chapter 5.